we can talk to the man at the kind of eye of this, Wes Streeting.
Good morning. Really pleased to be on your new show this morning.
How are you feeling?
Absolutely fine. I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to all the questions you're now going to ask me about how we're reinvesting billions of pounds, say, from cutting layers of management and bureaucracy in the NHS to the front line so we can cut waiting lists.
Yeah, you got it out there.
Well done. I'm sure we're going to get all of those questions right about now.
We will get some of those questions in, I promise. But look, you'll forgive me for asking about the rumours of a coup. So what is going on? The allies of the PM saying that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, the PM will fight it. So what, is there a leadership challenge? What's happening?
No, and I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was kicked out and banished in the final. It's totally self-defeating briefing, not least because it's not true. And I don't understand how anyone thinks it's helpful to the Prime Minister either to suggest he's fighting for his job at a time when... Last time I saw him on Monday evening to talk about violence against women and girls and how we tackle it, he's fighting for the country and trying to turn it around from the absolute mess that we inherited. So
what's your message then to people who have been briefing this? What would you say to them?
Well, firstly, I'd like to commend them for at least taking on board the feedback about sexist briefings, because we've seen this before. Lucy Powell, Bridget Phillipson, Angela Rayner could go around pretty much the entire cabinet table. So at least they're picking on one of the boys now. But in all seriousness, it doesn't help anyone. It's not true. And I think my frustration actually about the first, almost 18 months we've been in government, there is a good story to tell about the change we're delivering, the promises we're keeping, the difference we're making. But would your viewers this morning know that we promised 2 million more appointments in the NHS and delivered 5 million? I'm not sure they would. Would they know that we delivered 2,500 more GPs in our first year, not 1,000? I am not sure they would. But the serious point is, yes, I'm deliberately trying to make sure that people do actually get to hear the message of what we're doing.
I will
but the point is, the point is, these sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract from our ability to get across the message of the change we're making, the difference we're making on things that voters actually care about.
There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes. And nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
What about after the local elections next year? Is that a point when, if you do badly, if you lose in Wales, that it could be time for a change at the top?
Well, I'm not planning for us to do badly. In Scotland, we've got a dynamic leader.
Can you rule it out? Can you rule it out demanding the Prime Minister's resignation?
I'm not going in to demand the Prime Minister's resignation. I support the Prime Minister. I have done since he was elected leader of the Labour Party. I didn't vote for him in the leadership election, but I did support him from the moment he was elected, and I supported him all the way through at points when he did things that no one thought was possible. They didn't think he could turn around the Labour Party. He did. They didn't think he could win a general election. He did. People are now questioning whether he can change the country. He will.
Can I tell you what I think? I think that this was all briefed overnight, specifically so that you could say those things today on the morning round, right? Everyone knows that you're doing the morning round, you're taking questions from people like me. They're worried about the budget, they know how bad it's going to be, but they know that in all likelihood it looks like the manifesto is going to be broken. They want a public declaration of loyalty from the person who is seen as the most likely person to succeed the Prime Minister.
Well, I suppose the tragedy is everything I've just said about Keir's record, about confounding his critics, are things that I have said regularly and repeatedly whenever I've been asked questions about how he's doing or how the government's doing.
So you haven't had
the only thing that this has achieved is distracting me from talking about the fact that when the Prime Minister and I announced we were going to abolish NHS England, reduce the size of my department, the NHS, by 50%,
you will talk about
and cut through layers of management bureaucracy, lots of people said, well, this isn't going to happen. Today I'm setting out how we're going to do that. But, of course, we're going to spend most of the time, and I'm grateful you are actually going to come on to what I came on to talk about, but we will now spend more time on what is a totally irrelevant and untrue process story, but also a self-defeating one because it's come from Downing Street.
Have you had any conversations with anyone about getting rid of Keir Starmer?
No, and I tell you what I think this does show is that when Lucy Powell stood to be deputy leader of the Labour Party and said there needed to be a culture change in how we lead and how the party is managed, I think she has been vindicated.
Is it rotten? Do you think there's a rotten culture?
No, I wouldn't go that. No, and I'm not going to give whoever's behind this any more kind of oxygen and credit. I do think that going out and calling your Labour MPs feral is not very helpful. I do think that trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out, not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised, I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour. I also think whoever did this doesn't speak for the Prime Minister. I speak for the Prime Minister. That's why I was asked to come on this morning to talk about the reform agenda in the NHS. It's why I was with the Prime Minister on Monday evening with a small group of colleagues looking seriously at how we meet our ambitious goal of halving violence against women and girls in this country. Those are the things the Prime Minister's focused on. I think he will be horrified reading the front pages this morning. I don't think this is how he conducts himself, and I think people should follow the example set by their boss.
You just said there that you feel like they've tried to kneecap you. How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
Irritated, to be honest, because I want to talk about what we're actually doing in the NHS, but I wouldn't put it more strongly than that. I mean, the reason, I sort of laughed at the beginning because I just think water off a duck's back. Okay. It's a totally irrelevant process story. I suspect it will be forgotten by tomorrow. Most people, if they cotton on to this story, if they pay any attention to politics at all today, be scratching their head thinking, what's that about? As am I, and as am so many of my colleagues.
Part of the reason this has happened is because there's obviously a worry about what's happening in the budget. There's a worry about reform, who are breathing down your necks. Do you think there is a legitimate concern about the communication style, I guess, around the Prime Minister number 10, more authentic, less talking cliches, taking a few risks? I just want to read you a couple of, ex-posts from Keir Starmer's account, which I'm sure aren't written by him, by the way, but, here we go. I'll always stand for unity and national renewal. Another one, a Britain built for all. And then another one, we're choosing renewal over decline, unity over division, unlocking the potential of everyone in every part of the UK. I mean, it sounds like it was written by an AI bot.
Well, look, my approach, and I think Keir's approach, I think what the government needs to be doing is kind of the Ron Seal approach. Do what you say on the tin. We said we'd cut NHS waiting lists. They are lower now than when we came to office. Are they still too high? Is there more to do? Of course. A lot done, a lot more to do. We said we'd deliver 2 million more appointments in our first year. That was our first step. We actually delivered 5 million. So not only are we keeping promises on health, we are actually exceeding the expectations that we set for ourselves and the country expected of us. So there are plenty of good things to say about this government. And obviously I talk about health. I'm the health secretary. If Bridget Phillipson was sat here this morning, she'd be talking about the difference that breakfast clubs are making to kids across the country. So they start the day with hungry minds instead of hungry bellies. She'd be talking about the 100,000 children that are going to be lifted out of poverty because of her free school meals policy. If Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, was sat here, she'd be talking about the improvements to railways and buses, bringing them into public ownership. There's a good story to tell about this.
Let's talk about the good story that you want to tell today, which is about NHS bureaucracy, right? Because we said we'd talk about it and I want to honour it. What are you doing?
So the Prime Minister and I said we would abolish NHS England, the biggest quango in the world, that we would reduce the size of what would be a new Department of Health and Social Care by half of what the two organisations are today, and that we would also halve the size of integrated care boards, so that we can reduce the layers of bureaucracy in the NHS, which everyone complains about, from patients to frontline staff. When we made that promise, I think there was a bit of a sharp intake of breath. There were lots of people saying, are you actually going to be able to do it? And today, in a speech to NHS leaders, I'm setting out how we're going to do that. So within the next 2 years, NHS England will have been completely abolished. And over the course of the next 3 years, we will have halved those organisations. The work to reduce the size of ICBs, my department at NHS England is beginning immediately with a voluntary redundancy programme. And that will enable us to reinvest at least £1 billion a year into frontline services. And so I think the reassurance there, and you mentioned the budget, and the Chancellor does have a really difficult job, and she is having to weigh up some choices that she knows will be unpopular, but she thinks they're right. And it's my responsibility to make sure that as well as that extra £26 billion that's going into the NHS, we're also spending every single penny that's already there. Because I know that taxpayers are having to make sacrifices. I know that people are paying a lot and have been paying a high price for Conservative failure. It's our job now to turn it around. And with the NHS, our investment and modernisation is finally getting the NHS on the road to recovery. There are green shoots, a lot done, lots more to do, and I'd accept there's lots to go at, and there are still lots of things that aren't right about the NHS, but we're getting there. It's on the road to recovery.
So your message is, if the Chancellor breaks the manifesto and puts up some of those big taxes in the budget, it is worth it because of that investment in the NHS?
I'm not going to speculate on what is in the budget. I do think that the promises we make are important. I do think keeping promises are important. I think people know the Chancellor has got an extremely difficult set of choices and circumstances to manage, and she takes promises very, very seriously. And if she's deviating from anything that she's said before, the government said before, she doesn't do those things lightly, and she'll set out why she's making choices at the budget, and no doubt with the full support of the Labour Party behind her.
OK, Wes Streeting, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wes